It's a force of nature.
Oh my God!
Destructive storms, a looming threat each year.
And 2022 showed us we cannot take them lightly.
The southwest coast of Florida bearing it all. Oh my God, go, 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 go. As the deadly Hurricane Ian came ashore.
When you look at the Sanibel bridges, when you look at Fort Myers Beach, it's devastating.
Your Weather Authority team is getting you ready because it only takes one.
Warning you of the dangers.
Historically, it has been like that most lethal killer.
And the unpredictability of weather.
You were trapped by the water?
Trapped by the water. We couldn't go out.
The measures you need to take to prepare.
There's no gas here. I went everywhere.
And the advancements being made.
To make sure you are staying storm safe.
It's hurricane season again, and we need to get you prepared. I'm Chief Certified Meteorologist Betty Davis.
And I'm hurricane specialist and storm surge expert Michael Laurie. We're here in Fort Myers Beach, a town devastated by Hurricane Ian. Ian's strong winds and catastrophic storm surge caused a shocking amount of damage. Once again proving it only takes one.
The magnitude of that devastation is exactly why all these months later, this town still is struggling to recover.
Everywhere you look in Fort Myers Beach, you can see the destruction left behind by Hurricane Ian. Homes gutted, boats grounded, and businesses flattened. The September storm pummeled the southwest coast as a Category 4 hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 150 miles per hour.
More than 6 months later, there are signs of recovery along the southwest coast of Florida. Construction crews line this street. But in other areas, it is quite evident still there is much work to be done.
The cleanup has been going along ever since day one.
Steve Hauser has lived in the town for 8 years. His home, one of the few left standing in his neighborhood.
The house was built by FEMA regulations, which is 14 feet above elevation, which was great.
The damage to his home caused by 10 feet of storm surge. This was his neighborhood as rapidly moving water swamped the streets.
Garage doors were blown out. Everything in this garage, the only thing that was left in this garage was my 2 cars and the golf cart, and they were like turned sideways. Everything left the building. And most of it came through this way, went out this way. You couldn't go down the street because there was homes on the street itself, cottages that were on the street. They had to be bulldozed off the street like they were plowing snow.
Now construction is all around him, but not his neighbors.
At least 15 neighbors are gone, and none of them are rebuilding. None of them. They're all gone for good.
As we make our way through the beach town, places like the iconic Times Square are still hurting. Shattered buildings and faded facades are still awaiting repair. The pier, a place where only the birds can now perch. This quiet town seemingly populated solely by construction crews and a few tourists enjoying a day on the beach.
It hits me hard because, you know, some of it you see like I enjoyed coming here. I love.
We met Cape Coral resident Melissa Freeman while she was having lunch. She told us the recovery effort is exactly why she was there.
But you come out here and they are all so thankful. And this is what I really wish a lot of people would realize, that if we don't help them out, you know, then we might get stuck like this for a while.
And businesses here have adapted. Many we saw setting up food trucks and pop-up shops as they try to stay afloat.
I have so much hope that we're going to have this is like a rebirth to me, you know. They're going to rebuild it. It's going to come back stronger.
Millions of dollars from the state and federal governments have gone toward the cleanup and rebuilding effort. In fact, Ian is now the costliest hurricane in Florida's history, causing an estimated $114 billion in damage. It is the third costliest hurricane to hit the U.S. Hurricane Harvey is second. Hurricane Katrina tops the list, causing more than $192 billion in damage.
Much of the damage wasn't even from Ian's winds alone. Homes and businesses submerged in more than 10 feet of storm surge, and the videos were shocking. Hurricane Ian produced one of the highest storm surges we've measured this century. As the 2023 hurricane season begins, we take a look at the dynamics behind this force of nature.
Please keep going. Oh my God, go, 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 go.
The storm surge from Hurricane Ian quickly surrounded and filled homes, choking off any means of escape. The wind-driven surge smashed through the front office of this repair shop on Sanibel Island. But behind, just feet away, the glass garage door remains intact, the car and the lift inside seemingly untouched. Just how high the storm surge got takes a little time to unpack, but here at Fort Myers Beach, a storm surge sensor strapped to the pier told us exactly how high, 15 feet above the beach, causing catastrophic storm surge, not just here at the beach, but well inland. The aftermath is hard for residents like Daniel Larson to fathom.
It doesn't feel real to me. I mean, these places, like that 7-Eleven, I used to stop there all the time and just get a drink, and it's gone.
I think one point to be made is, how dangerous and how significant of an impact storm surge can be. Historically, it has been like that most lethal killer as it relates to a hurricane and its impacts.
Dr. Cody Fritz is the storm surge specialist with the National Hurricane Center.
I think it's just to remind people, too, how powerful that water can be, and the fact that it can move homes, boats, and cars. It can penetrate pretty far inland, to not just right at the immediate coast. It's a serious situation when you have that kind of significant storm surge impacting a coastline, especially for like west coast of Florida, which is extremely vulnerable to storm surge, as is much of the Gulf Coast. Not long after Ian hit, we met up with Gene Longenecker in Cape Coral. He's an expert with the University of Central Florida.
So we're just going to set this in the debris pile itself.
And is working to gain a greater understanding of how the storm surge impacted the area.
Making the distinctions about what type of water was moving through here. Was it salt water? Was it fresh water? Gauge where we need to go. Did it affect the buildings? Were the buildings scoured in any way? That sort of thing.
But what about Florida's East Coast? Trying to imagine how a storm like Ian might impact southeast Florida, we look to the past. Nearly a century ago, the great 1926 Miami hurricane swept the Atlantic Ocean over the entirety of Miami Beach, up to 10 feet in spots, through Biscayne Bay and several blocks into downtown Miami.
There is a very real possibility that you could in the near future, and I say that to everybody who lives along the coast, that it is possible. There will be a point in time where you can experience something like that.
Farther inland, the impacts with a storm like Ian would be different.
You wouldn't necessarily expect to see as significant as inland flooding along some of the parts of the Miami area, Dade County, and so on. But in this area, it's uniquely vulnerable to the approach angle of Ian and just the intensity of the storm at the time.
That's just from the storm surge. But the torrential rain component of Ian caused considerable inland flash flooding and river overflow across the state, flooding that continued weeks after landfall.
It's tough to really accept that this is what it is, So.
Ian's flooding wasn't just destructive, it was deadly. At least 149 people across 19 counties in Florida lost their lives. Most of the direct deaths were caused by drowning, both at the coast and inland.
Coming up,
It's devastating.
washed away how the infrastructure fared against Hurricane Ian.
What could you say? Everything was gone.
And it's the damage you can't see.
A lot of people experiencing direct trauma.
The advice from mental health experts as the season begins.
Plus,
this is our mobile EV charging trailer.
Taking Charge, the new tool from FPL that may roll into your neighborhood.
We're going to have 200 people plus here weathering a storm.
The first of its kind in the Keys. We take you into the new Emergency Operations Center being built right now.
And then,
This is insane.
it was the shortage felt all across South Florida. How Broward is preparing for hurricane season after historic flooding. It's all ahead on Staying Storm Safe.
This Local 10 special is sponsored by All American Roofing, FPL, and PGT Custom Windows and Doors.
It was one of the more shocking sights in the aftermath of Hurricane Ian. Large sections of the Sanibel Island Causeway washed away, leaving the causeway in pieces. Its destruction cut residents and emergency response teams off from the tiny island town, forcing them to go by boat or by air. As with any hurricane, recovery will take years, and no doubt infrastructure will change. But first, we need to understand what failed and why. So I went to investigate Hurricane Ian's damage with a civil engineering expert shortly after the storm hit. We've all seen the images of Sanibel Island Causeway, one of the key arteries to barrier islands affected by both the wind and waves generated by this massive storm. I met with Dr. Fred Blecher with the College of Engineering at Florida Atlantic University, who says the failures were due to the construction of the seawalls, as well as the approaches to the bridge.
What you need is a true sheet piling that goes down in the ground. Then what we need to do is we need to start putting in geogrids, okay, so that if the water does get in there, that the geogrids are designed so that it doesn't allow the material to move.
Dr. Blecher says what's surprising is how quickly temporary repairs were made, allowing residents and recovery crews to regain access to the islands.
I think we all need to understand these are temporary fixes.
And more fixes are coming. Florida Department of Transportation will start making permanent repairs this summer, hoping to finish up sometime next year. Right now, it's going to cost more than $300 million. 99% of the county's 446 traffic signals were operational within 10 days of the storm, in large part due to the newer construction methods. When you look at the damage, you look at the photos, you look at the aerials, what stands out to you as being the biggest surprise or, the biggest takeaway from this hurricane?
A couple of big surprises. One is how well I think the power grid held up, which tells you how quickly they got the power back.
A second surprise, how quickly a boil water notice was lifted for the majority of residents in Lee County. Although Blecher says there are areas of concern.
The storm surge that you saw here, or you saw in Fort Myers Beach, you saw sand all over the road. Well, if there was an opening in the system, guess where the sand is? It's down in the sanitary sewer system. It also filled the sanitary sewer system up, so it was not functioning.
Long before the storm hit, emergency crews were strategically positioned, ready to spring into action.
Overall, the response to getting people out here, the state, the feds, the county, the communities, everybody responded to this, so people were here in a hurry so that you have more help.
The successes of the infrastructure and plans for response go to show that the lessons learned from the 5 other major hurricanes to hit the Gulf Coast over the past 6 years have been invaluable and life-saving.
After a storm, the damage is apparent, but there's also damage we can't see. The trauma of a major storm and the stress of that aftermath can do a number on people's mental health. I sat down with a mental health expert to talk about the increase in demand they've seen since Hurricane Ian and how you can prepare yourself.
Thank you.
Service with a smile. But in the aftermath of Hurricane Ian, it hasn't been so easy to keep that smile.
I mean, what could you say? Everything was gone. You know, all my friends' homes, you know, we lost so many good people. It was devastating. It was a shock. Some days it still is.
Michelle Povonder manages Yo Taco in Fort Myers Beach.
I don't even really think I've taken a break to even processed it. You know, I don't think none of us really have.
The business was wiped away in the storm. The owners and staff forced to adapt to keep the business alive.
What did you lose? We left our whole building. Actually, where y'all got your food at was actually our kitchen.
The food truck, now standing on what once was their restaurant.
Before the storm, this is actually where people would stand. Our order window was actually right here, so you would actually order right here. There you go, Sunshine.
As they serve up tacos and burritos to hungry tourists, they're continuing to cope with everything they lost.
We call it hurricane brain here. So we got to keep looking forward, smile on your faces, and just keep pushing forward. When you're out here on the main street, you still get a feeling of hope. It's when you go on your side street or when you go home at night, that's when you really, like, really? But you get up the next day and hey.
Ian certainly brought out a lot of people experiencing direct trauma or residual stress from the storm.
Dawn Bellamarch is the director for behavioral health for Lee Health Systems in Fort Myers. She says there's been an uptick in people looking for help.
We continue to see a lot of people seeking help to this day. Certainly as more time goes on and people get out of crisis mode and start to really deal with their feelings surrounding such a cataclysmic event.
Her prescription?
Talk about it. I mean, I hate to keep it as simple as that, right? But the only way, we get away from people feeling a fear about needing something concrete like a prescription is that we have regular conversations around, what it's like to have a human experience.
How do you stay positive when you've lost everything?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. We're humans, all having a human experience, right? But I think being positive doesn't always mean that you're smiling or that, you think everything's going to work out.
It may be hard to stay positive, and that's why it's important to support each other.
There are a couple things that were really apparent to me after the storm, which was really the ability for an entire community to rally and the resilience of the people.
It's a community Povonder is eager to see return.
It's not going to happen over a day. It's not going to happen in a month. It's a personal journey that each individual is going to have to take upon themselves to do. But they got the support. The support is here. So we all love each other. We give big hugs. We hug a lot.
Let me give you a hug.
Oh, of course. I love that. We do the wiggle. She got the taco hug. Love you.
After a storm, look after yourself, but also look after others. If you see someone's behavior change, check on them. It could be a sign that they're struggling, and talking about it will always help.
Next, a surge in popularity.
We are going to need exponential growth in our charging infrastructure.
What electric car owners should know ahead of the season.
Plus,
there's no gas here. I went everywhere.
Fuel frustrations. Historic rain leading to catastrophic flooding in Fort Lauderdale and a gas crisis.
Demand grew so high that they couldn't refuel it in time.
What officials are saying ahead of hurricane season.
We've been experimenting with the 7-day formation chances.
Evolving forecasts. The pilot program's taking off this season. All when Staying Storm Safe comes back. With sleek designs and promises of sustainability, the popularity of electric cars is surging. If you've lived in Florida long enough, you know that ahead of a storm, you should always have a full tank of gas. But how do you prepare with an electric car?
Weather Authority meteorologist Jordan Patrick spoke to Florida Power and Light to find out how they are adapting to the EV evolution.
Well, Betty, they are fun, they are futuristic, and they are just downright cool. But with hurricane season coming, just how are you going to prep your new EV for before, during, and after the storm? They're taking charge of the roads. The auto industry has evolved drastically over the last 10 years. Emphasis on the EV. Just about every automaker has at least one EV on the market at just about every price point, only further increasing popularity. In fact, by 2030, more than 1 in 4 new cars sold are projected to be electric.
We're seeing every day more and more people getting these cars. I myself showcase these cars to at least 5 or 6 families a day.
Brian Lara works with Mercedes-Benz of Coral Gables, which is just one of the many automakers expanding into the EV market.
Going forward with that brand and the demand for it, it's only increasing.
Florida is the second largest state in the country for electric vehicles today, so it's growing exponentially, and we are also going to need exponential growth in our charging infrastructure.
Crystal Stiles is with Florida Power and Light.
So this is our mobile EV charging trailer that we have just unveiled as part of this year's storm season.
Who showed us how the company is adapting to the EV revolution with hurricane season in mind.
This is our trailer. It's capable of charging 6 cars at a time, so there's 4 chargers here and 2 on the back. This is the battery cabinet that powers it all.
FPL has unveiled its Evolution mobile trailer, an EV charging station on wheels.
We can get about 4,000 miles of charge from the trailer, and so we're really excited about rolling this out this year.
This trailer will be deployed along evacuation routes during a hurricane event or after a storm to areas that have lost power. In the event of a storm, FPL reassures that charging your car with one of these is very simple. All you do is select the type of charger your car takes, plug it in, and watch it charge.
This is pilot technology. This didn't exist when we started building it. This technology is going to evolve and change over time. And so these 2 trailers are just the start of our approach to supporting customers through storms.
But these trailers aren't all they have. In fact, there's more than 1,000 charging ports all across the state. And Stiles says another 1,000 are planned at 250 locations from Miami to Pensacola. In the event of an evacuation, FPL has an online tool called EV Expressway, where drivers can map their route and see all charging stations along the way. And it's also available on the Evolution app. All of this is in an effort to ease the fears of EVs losing charge during a storm event.
It will let you know how many ports are available and how fast they'll charge so that you can plan your route very easily.
But even if you aren't planning to evacuate, you still need to have a plan in place. Just like filling up a gas car, be sure to charge your EV at least 50 to 80%. We'll be right back.
Still ahead.
You're a foot underwater.
Months of rain falling in just hours, leading to a shortage felt all across South Florida.
We pulled into one place, diesel only, another place, diesel only.
The plan Broward has to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Plus, we're going to have 200 people plus here.
Breaking ground. Go inside the new Emergency Operations Center for the Florida Keys. And
I have not had a power bill in 2.5 years.
Shining a light on solar, the benefits of switching, and the community that stood out in the aftermath of Ian.
It's all ahead on Staying Storm Safe.
Welcome back. More than 2 feet of rain fell, most of it in just 6 hours. The city of Fort Lauderdale got swamped back in April when severe weather rolled through. Residents in some neighborhoods lost their homes due to the flooding. Feet of water rushed in.
Weather Authority meteorologist Luke Doris went to one of those neighborhoods hardest hit. He spoke to the head of Broward's Emergency Operations Center about their response to that weather event ahead of hurricane season.
Betty, I'm in Melrose Park, a neighborhood that saw some of the worst damage from that flooding. It's been weeks since that unprecedented rain hit this area, and piles of debris like this still remain as people keep cleaning up.
Look, every single wall.
Yeah,
all
every
walls.
single wall.
More than a month after catastrophic flooding, the cleanup at Lily Charles' house continues.
I finally got someone to come and tear this down.
Charles's home was left with feet of water, both inside and out.
We was held hostage for about 3 days.
Meaning you were trapped by the
we
water?
Was trapped by the water. We couldn't go out. The rain stopped, basically. It came here, basically.
These images showing the water creeping in, and in her backyard, the pool hard to even see.
I said, Lord, please just stop the rain some kind of way.
Her home, just one of so many in Melrose Park, damaged when months' worth of rain fell in just hours.
We've had a lot of rainy days really since Sunday. Today we're going to see possibly that much again, so flooding is a concern.
On April 12th, flooding was in the forecast, but just how much caught everyone by surprise.
5 o'clock, I'm kind of checking. They're good, we're good. Okay. 7:30. Wait, what? Wait. How much rain is falling?
Tracy Jackson is the director of Broward's Emergency Operations Center. He was at Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport that day, meeting with new staff.
As we're riding around, we specifically grilled them. Okay, so how do you guys stay aware of flood conditions here? We went through the whole thing and it sounded awesome. Different ponds, the runways are clear.
But hours later, runways inundated, along with much of the city of Fort Lauderdale.
And everybody just went to work as fast as they could and as quickly as they could.
The county's EOC springing into action, reaching out to city leaders.
What do you need? What do you guys do? And how can we help support you? And those conversations happened that evening and went into 3, 4, 5 o'clock the next morning.
And providing the resources they needed with the help of outside agencies.
The Fish and Wildlife Commission has airboats. They were like, we think we're going to need help with them.
The element of surprise is what sets weather events like this apart from a tropical storm or hurricane.
Time. We have time to make everyone aware that it's approaching. People have an opportunity to prepare. A sudden, no-notice event like this, that preparation time does not exist.
It's all about the time. Having more time allows officials and agencies like the South Florida Water Management District the ability to lower canals will help with flooding and prevent disasters like what Charles hopes to never see again.
Well, you know what? I just go with the flow. We're here stuck again.
Yeah.
Waiting for more work to be done. But it'll get done eventually. Hopefully that they would do something before the next thing happens.
Now is the time to review your county's flood zone map. But remember, like we just learned with this weather event, just because you don't live in a flood zone doesn't mean that you can't get some flooding. The major lesson that we can pull from this historic weather event is the importance of owning flood insurance if you can. Michael?
The damage wasn't all that we had from that storm. The flooding ended up affecting gas being delivered all across South Florida. Weather Authority meteorologist Julie Durda has a look at why officials say that the gas crisis we experienced back in April won't be happening after a storm hits.
I'm here in Port Everglades, which became the center of the gas crisis. The fuel here having trouble getting to a gas station near you after the historic rain. But officials say what happened then won't happen again.
We pulled into one place, diesel only, another place, diesel only.
And I've been driving like for 2-3 hours looking for gas, and I finally found a gas station, and then I waited another hour and a half.
It was the shortage felt all across South Florida.
There's no gas here. I went everywhere. Everywhere. There was nothing.
For several days, lines spanned down streets and around corners. Gas stations just waiting on deliveries, delayed due to the historic flooding in Fort Lauderdale.
There was plenty of fuel at the port, plenty. There was a day or two they couldn't get to it because of the water. And then one of the pumps broke down, so they're sending trucks out, just as usual. But people listening to other people panicked, and demand grew so high that they couldn't refuel it in time.
All the gas, all the diesel, all the jet fuel to the 4 South Florida counties comes through Port Everglades.
Port Everglades ended up inundated, with 5 out of 12 petroleum company terminals getting damaged. The shortage prompting the state to deploy more than 500,000 gallons of gas from other ports. Days after the flooding, the director of Port Everglades pointed out the role of climate change.
It's a resiliency issue that all of us are going through.
And said the issue won't happen again.
We always look for gaps in the system, and this certainly brought to light some of the issues that may be out there. First of all, we hope that we don't have to deal with this type of issue again, this type of storm again.
The rain event on April 12th couldn't have been predicted, which is why the mayor of Broward says we shouldn't expect a repeat of what happened after a hurricane.
In a hurricane scenario, we are able to prepare in advance. We know the storm is coming for a 1 to 2 week period, so we can obviously shore up, get plated, get where we need to be, get all the fuel in here necessary. This obviously was a storm, as we all know. We've talked about till we're blue in our faces about being a 1,000-year storm. We just couldn't predict the amount of rain and amount of water it was going to produce throughout our county, and more importantly in the port.
But besides preparing, the mayor is pushing for a change at the port moving forward.
We're going to be changing our ordinance to make sure that any future terminals that are on board, they have to elevate their pumps.
The port director says that he expects the fuel companies would want to elevate their pumps, just like the jet fuel company did at the newest terminal. They built it to code, and they did just fine. We'll be right back.
Still to come.
Let's put it this way. I have not had a power bill in 2.5 years.
Bright idea. Solar energy growing across the state. Plus,
why is it so important to be able to have a dedicated place like this?
Speed of recovery.
A look at the new Emergency Operations Center breaking ground in the Keys.
But first, 2, 1, taking off.
This will just give people a little extra heads up.
The new tools being used by the National Hurricane Center this season. That and much more when Staying Storm Safe returns. They're flying hundreds of miles above the Earth, sending back all their data to forecasters here on the ground. And each one is about the size of a loaf of bread. A new research project has literally taken off with the help of NASA.
And its goal is to make forecasting for you even better. Weather Authority meteorologist Brandon Orr spoke to one of the scientists involved in the project.
This is brand new technology meant to detect rapid changes in both storm structure and intensity. The orbiting satellites we have right now, they give us updates about every 6 hours, but this new technology gives us updates every single hour. And all of this data coming back to us scientists to help improve not only our computer models, but the forecast cone.
3, 2, 1.
The first of 4 satellites taking off from New Zealand.
These are very small satellites. They're about the size of a shoebox.
Jason Dunyan is the director of NOAA's Hurricane Field Program. He was part of the team to get this project off the ground. How do you expect us meteorologists to use this new data?
We're working hard to get the data down to ground stations around the world so that forecasters, meteorologists can use it in near real time so that you can actually see a storm maybe growing or rapidly intensifying or changing in structure, things that we can't usually see.
These small satellites meant to improve forecasting during hurricane season. They orbit about 340 miles above the Earth, right over the tropics, as part of the Tropics constellation. What Tropics stands for is a mouthful. Time-resolved observations of precipitation structure and storm intensity with a constellation of small sats.
And they're able to use microwave channels to peer at hurricanes and peer through the tops of hurricanes.
Using a microwave spectrometer, the satellites feed back data focusing on temperature, humidity, and precipitation structure as it relates to storm intensity.
We're going to have 4 of them up here right about the peak of hurricane season.
While NASA works to help forecasters with new projects, there's already some new ones being used this season by the National Hurricane Center.
This will just give people a little extra heads up.
This year, the NHC will be using a 7-day formation potential rather than the 5-day.
That's especially important for folks in South Florida because we can have systems form and make landfall or produce impacts with very little notice.
Also going into use this year, the peak storm surge graphic, which has been used for years but officially launching this season.
It's a sort of a high-level snapshot of the storm surge forecast for a given system.
So nobody can predict, 2 or 3 days out exactly how much storm surge is going to occur in each location. I wish we could. It's just beyond the limits of science.
But it's those limits that they all work to push.
I think it's important to appreciate that there's a lot of effort that goes in to trying to improve the models well before they even make an impact on a place like South Florida.
And they're expected to make a big impact. A study found that data gathered from these satellites helped improve hurricane track forecast by 15% and hurricane intensity forecast by 10%. Betty?
As NASA works to make forecasts better, NOAA and Colorado State University have released their predictions for this season.
Colorado State is calling for a slightly below average season with 13 named storms, 6 of those becoming hurricanes, 2 of which may become Category 3 or stronger. NOAA is predicting a near normal season, 12 to 17 named storms with 5 to 9 becoming hurricanes. 1 to 4 of those may turn Category 3 or stronger. After the break,
we're going to have 200 people plus here weathering a storm.
Breaking ground. We go inside the Keys' new Emergency Operations Center.
Well, let's put it this way. I have not had a power bill in 2.5 years.
And let the sunshine in. Solar's growing popularity in the community whose lights stayed on after Ian. Staying storm safe comes back. The Florida Keys are one of the most vulnerable areas in South Florida when it comes to tropical systems. They've seen more than their fair share of storms, and believe it or not, they've been doing it without their own emergency operations center. But that's about to change. Monroe County has just broken ground on their future EOC site, and Local 10's Janine Stanwood got an exclusive look.
We're going to have 200 people plus here weathering a storm.
It's 30,000 square feet, designed for winds up to 220 miles per hour, with special waterproofing in the concrete.
This is a precast building system, so basically we have foundations with continuous footings all the way around.
We use ladders to climb upstairs. The main floor is 22 feet up to clear any potential flooding. Renderings show this new emergency operations center just west of the Marathon Airport will be state-of-the-art.
We're on the only level of the Emergency Operations Center. We're walking here from where our first responders are going to be. This is your 911 call center.
Carrie Knight with Monroe County says there was a grant in 2008 to design a new and dedicated EOC, but there was no money to build it. Then Hurricane Irma hit. The EOC housed inside this government center had to be evacuated. That was a wake-up call.
Everybody had to leave the EOC and go up to Ocean Reef. So there was actually no one here weathering the storm.
State and federal dollars were soon used to fund this $32 million project. We're told it can be operational for 72 hours, completely off the grid. Why is it so important to be able to have a dedicated place like this?
Speed of recovery. We want to get people back to their lives, back to their homes.
And if you have all the important people who are making decisions here, like, they're going to be fine, right?
Exactly, yeah, they'll be able to actually operate out of here. Water tank, sewer storage tanks, generators, everything to when a Category 5 hits.
You can see the construction is well underway. This facility, by the way, is expected to be completed by the spring of next year. We're in Marathon. I'm Janine Stanwood. We'll be right back.
Hurricane Ian knocked out power for more than 2 million Floridians across the state, and some were without power for weeks, if not longer. With so many homes and businesses knocked off the grid, one community stood out.
Just miles outside of the disaster zone was one area running on solar energy. Local 10's Amy Viteri tells us about solar's growing popularity.
I had between 2.5 and 3 feet of seawater in my home.
This is how Hurricane Irma left Cindy Lewis's ground floor home in the Florida Keys in 2017.
So everything I owned in the house was destroyed.
Forced to tear down, Lewis rebuilt on the same lot in Long Key. The new house sits on stilts well above sea level.
Among all the steps Cindy Lewis has taken to make her new home more resilient, one of the biggest investments she's made is up on her roof.
I have produced enough energy here in my 15 solar panels on this little roof to completely power the house every month and sell back to the grid.
Lewis says she's now looking to purchase battery storage for her system to have power even in the event of an outage.
Which will absolutely give me peace of mind. I have friends who have battery backups, and on the occasions where there is an outage, the transition is seamless.
In the aftermath of Hurricane Ian, this 100% solar-powered community made headlines when it never lost power during the Category 4 storm. Babcock Ranch sits around 15 miles from hard-hit Fort Myers. Its field of 700,000 solar panels, managed by Florida Power and Light, seemingly untouched. A spokesperson for FPL telling us while the panels held up well in the storm, their storm-hardened grid and underground lines at Babcock Ranch helped maintain power.
I think Ian is giving us an opportunity to think about how do we want to make our communities more resilient, and looking at solar and solar plus storage is a really good option.
Laura Telez is the program coordinator for the nonprofit Solar United Neighbors in South Florida.
So it is important to understand that unless you have battery storage, if the power goes out, even if you have solar, your system will shut off automatically, and that is to protect any utility workers.
But in the Sunshine State, many solar users feel the technology has come up against too many roadblocks. Last year, Florida's legislature passed a controversial bill backed by FPL that would have largely done away with what's known as net metering, the process through which solar power users lower their bills, getting credit for excess energy they produce. Ultimately, Governor Ron DeSantis stepped in and vetoed the bill, citing inflation and escalating bills, saying the state of Florida should not contribute to the financial crunch that our citizens are experiencing. FPL also increased rates and imposed a minimum base bill, which went into effect last summer, infuriating many customers now forced to pay a minimum of $25, whether they use that power or not. Solar users like Jim Blankenship feel particularly targeted by the policy.
That makes me buy energy that I don't have access to as a solar customer. And that's not true for non-solar customers.
Blankenship, who lives in Vero Beach, argues the energy he's paying for and not using would be enough to run an electric car for an entire year.
I believe that we were being penalized. The energy business, the solar business is being penalized.
And even with the draw that this is pulling down, I still have a zero energy bill every month.
Lewis, who lives in the Keys, is not an FPL customer and not subject to that minimum base bill.
Remove these obstacles so that people can at least make that choice and make it an affordable choice for everybody, or more affordable for more people.
An FPL spokesperson says the bill helps make sure other customers aren't subsidizing those with low or zero usage. They say it's an alternative to raising the base charge because that would affect everyone.
According to the Solar Energy Industries Association, Florida actually ranks third in the country when it comes to solar, with enough energy to power more than 1 million homes.
Remember, the earlier you plan, the better prepared you'll be. So head to local10.com and check out our hurricane section to download our hurricane survival guide, or scan the QR code on your screen. In it, you'll find checklists, numbers for county resources, a list of shelters, and much more.
And remember, you can keep an eye on the tropics with our Max Tracker app. You'll get the latest updates from your Weather Authority meteorologists. You can find it in your app store or scan the QR code on your screen. So get ready and make a plan, South Florida.
Stay storm safe, and thanks for watching.